As we're talking about the principles of building your ambition, let me give you the fifth one: working with others. The fifth principle for building your ambition revolves around working with others. Now, why do you think that your ability to work with others has an effect on building your ambition? This may sound a bit like a paradox, a contradiction, especially since we've stressed self-reliance and taking personal responsibility for all you do. But a successful life does involve other people: family, associates, kids, parents, employees, friends. Working with others, or living with others, or spending time with others means that you must also take responsibility for your relationships. Take bosses, for instance. How many bosses do you know that'd be totally lost without their secretary? Quite a few. They're a team. One takes the spotlight. The other is invaluable behind the scenes. One's a great idea person. The other a great detail person. They work together, or it wouldn't work at all. Of course, you need to be responsible for yourself and to yourself before you can be responsible to another person. You need to be the best you can be so that you can bring your absolute best to any relationship. And that's the tie-in to building your ambition. Building yourself so you can build mutually beneficial relationships. It's like we said before, you can't be successful by yourself. And with that in mind, let's talk about a few ways to build relationships. Most of these tips are for building business relationships, building contacts, building good working relationships with colleagues, with vendors, with prospects, with future clients and present clients and past clients. Building relationships. But remember, we are all people, regardless of our profession, and many of these tips work well for building other relationships too. Let's start with kindness. How kind should you be? As kind as you possibly can. Who should you be kind to? To everyone you come in contact with. From taxi drivers to hotel clerks to waitresses to store clerks to people on the street and people in your office and people at home. Be kind to everyone. And here's why. A kind word goes a long way. Somebody's having a bad day and you don't know they're having a bad day. But somebody's really feeling bad and you offer up a kind word. Maybe it's just a friendly, "Hello, how are you?" Maybe it's just taking a minute or two to listen to what somebody has to say. But your few words of kindness or your few minutes of attention could turn somebody's day around, might make them feel more worthwhile, cared for. Be generous with your kindness. It'll go a long way. People will remember, whether you know them or not. If you're in a crowded restaurant and you're especially nice to the waiter, guess what? He'll remember you next time you come in. And then guess what'll happen? You'll get even better service. When you give kindness, it's not gone, it's invested. It'll come back to you 2, 5, 10, 100 times. Kindness, it's so important in every aspect of your life. It's so important in building good relationships with others. Now, here's what else is important: sensitivity. Being touched by the experiences of others. Being sensitive to others. Understanding the plight of others. Opening up your heart and your mind and your attention to address the needs of others. The people you work with, the people you live with. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Seeing, if you can, what's going on in their heart. If there's a problem, you've got to be sensitive enough to ask some questions. Not one question, but many questions. Sometimes you won't even get through to the root of the problem until you've gotten 2 or 3 questions deep. Most people won't reveal the problem on the first question. You say, "Mary, how are you today? How are things?" And she says, "Well, everything's okay." And you can tell by the way she said it that everything's not okay. And most of us don't want to come right out and say what the real problem is unless 2 criteria are met. Number 1, we're talking to someone we can trust. And number 2, we're talking to someone who really cares. So sometimes it takes that second question, maybe a third, and maybe a fourth, before trust builds. And the person finally understands that you do care. Then they're willing to tell you what's really going on, what's really on their mind. Gosh, that saves so much time asking questions up front. Did you ever talk for an hour and then ask a question? Found out that you just wasted the previous hour? Learn to ask questions that will build the trust and communication between you and those you work with. Learn to express, not impress. If you want to touch somebody, express sincerity from the heart. Impress builds a gulf. Express builds a bridge. Identification. You want to be able to relate your thoughts and philosophies and experiences to someone who'll say, "Me too. I know what you mean." You don't want their reaction to be, "So what?" If you're meeting someone for the first time, you're simply getting acquainted, making contact. Here's where you start. Find something you have in common. Find something you can both identify with. Start with where they are before you try taking them where you want them to go. So if you're trying to talk to somebody who's been stricken in the heart, and you've had this experience, you can talk about being stricken in the heart, and it'll mean something. It'll have substance, it'll have depth. And if you start there and then start building the bridge, you have identification. Then you start building rapport. And when you start building a rapport with someone, or when you want to enhance the rapport you have with someone, you need effective communication skills. You'll need the skills that'll help you work better with others to achieve their goals and achieve your goals. You need effective communication skills. Let me give you a few tips on good communication. Because to be able to get along well with others, to be able to work well with others, to be able to live well with others, you must be a good communicator. Number 1, have something worth saying. Interest, fascination, sensitivity, and knowledge. Number 2, now that you've got something worth saying, number 2 is say it well. And you've got to be able to translate it so it'll benefit someone. You must have a good delivery system for your substance and knowledge and awareness and understanding and experience. Learn to say it well. And here are some clues on saying it well. Number 1, sincerity. The best communication occurs when both people are sincere, one sincerely wishing to learn or listen, and the other sincerely wishing to share. Number 2 in saying it well is repetition. Part of saying it well is simply practicing to say it well. Practice, practice, practice. Part of what I teach in sales training is practice. Practice. You start with something simple. And when you don't know much about what you're doing, practice is even more important. Let's say you're in sales and your presentation's not that good, and you wander around saying, "You wouldn't want to buy this, would you?" I'm telling you, maybe if you say that often enough during the day, somebody might say, "Well, maybe I would. What are you selling?" Now you can't say, "Mind your own business." No, once you've opened the door, you've got to go through it. Here's what happens if you practice in sales. You're bound to make sales. Somebody will say, "What are you selling?" and you've got to tell them. Maybe they'll want it. You're bound to get better. If you practice, you'll get better. You'll get better at your sales presentation. You'll get better at listening to your prospect. You'll get better at closing the sale. You'll get better at earning a living. Practice is just as valuable as a sale. Because here's what's valuable in sales: the skills. The sale will make you a living. The skills will make you a fortune. So, practice your presentation and your ability to communicate what you know. The people out there who say, no, I wouldn't care for any, are just as valuable. Why? Because they took the time to let you practice your presentation. And especially when you're just getting started, you might want to pay them to listen to you practice while you stumble around. So, be thankful for the no's. Practice helps you develop skills. Skills make labor more valuable. If you just sell, you can make a living. If you skillfully sell, you can make a fortune. If you just talk, you can hold a family together. If you skillfully talk, you can build dreams and the future. The difference is skill. You can cut a tree down with a hammer, but it takes about 30 days. If you trade the hammer for an axe, you can cut the tree down in about 30 minutes. The difference between the 30 minutes and 30 days is the tool. And your best communication tool is your skill. So practice to get the skill of saying it well. Part of saying it well is sincerity. The next part is repetition. Now here's another part of saying it well: brevity. Sometimes you don't need too much, just enough. The more you know, here's what I found out. The more you know, the briefer you can be. Because you can learn to make words more effective. Jesus was brief when he was putting his team together. He just wandered around the countryside, and every once in a while he'd see somebody he wanted on his team and said, "You follow me." Now that's short. That's brief. Now, why could Jesus be so brief and yet be so effective? Here's what I think. For all that he was that he didn't have to say. For all that he was that he didn't have to say. When you become bigger, when you become wiser, when you become stronger, you become a person of better reputation, so that when you arrive, maybe your reputation has preceded you. And when you get there, you don't have to say much. You don't have to launch into a 2-hour harangue if your reputation has preceded you. Your reputation will get a lot of the job done for you before you ever arrive. Next is style. Part of saying it well is style. Be a student of style, a variety of styles. Then make sure you develop your own. Be a student, but develop your own. Don't be someone else. Let someone else influence you, but don't become them. Develop your own style. Here's another tip on saying it well: vocabulary. You've just got to have a good vocabulary to say it well. Vocabulary. We can only translate for other people with the tools called vocabulary. If you're lacking in vocabulary, then you're lacking in tools to describe some problem or some answer. Words, vocabulary. You can't communicate without them. And you can't communicate well without a defined vocabulary. Every time you come across a word that's new to you, what should you do? Look it up. Every time you're in a conversation and the other person uses a word that's new to you, look it up. Now, most of the time you can figure out the meaning of a new word by how it's used. But if you can't, make sure you hold your response until you know for sure. Several years ago, some of my friends took a survey among prisoners, some rehabilitation program they were working on. And they weren't looking for this, but here's what they found. There's definitely a relationship between vocabulary and behavior. Interesting. This is what they found. The more limited the vocabulary, the more the tendency to poor behavior. Wow. When you stop to think about it for a moment, it makes sense. Vocabulary is a way of seeing. It gives us insight, and only with your present vocabulary can you see. You can't use tools you don't have to see, to create light, understanding, awareness, comprehension, perception, vision. You can only have as much vision as your present vocabulary will give you. And if you're limited in vocabulary, then you can't see very well. What if a person could only see the world through a little tiny hole? Can you imagine the mistakes he'd make in judgment? He'd say, "Here's how it is." You'd say, "No, that's not how it is. Here's how it is." The guy says, "But I can't see it." How come he can't see it? He doesn't have the vocabulary to understand the translation. Now, vocabulary is also what we use as a tool to express what's going on in our heart, what's going on in our head. Translate our questions, translate our answers, our perceptions, what we see, to be able to say it. And I'm telling you, if you have a limited way of translating and expressing what's going on in your heart and what's going on in your head, you'll fall way behind. So you'd have twin problems without a good vocabulary. Number one, you wouldn't be able to see. Number two, you wouldn't be able to express. And your world would keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, not having the vision, not having the tools. Finally, you wouldn't need a place much bigger than 10 by 12 to live. Why? That's about as big as some people's world is. That's all they've got, this little narrow world, making mistakes every day. Why? They can't see. Getting it wrong every day. They can't comprehend. They can't understand. No tools with which to translate. For good communication, number one is having something good to say. Number two is saying it well. And number three is reading your audience. You've got to read what's going on between you and the people you're talking to. Should you say what you're saying a little softer? Should you say it a little stronger? Should you explain it more? Should you be more clear and concise? Should you quit? A lot of the decision-making that's going on during a conversation with someone depends on how well you can read, how well you can tell what's going on in the minds of those you're trying to reach. Doesn't matter if you're looking into the face of a child or the face of a colleague or 1,000 faces in an audience. You've got to read what's going on. You've got to pay attention. So let me give you some ways to read. The first one is you've got to read what you see. You've got to read what you see. Search the face of a child and see if you're coming across. See if they look perplexed. See if they're getting it. See if they can't get it. Body language tells us a lot. Look at how the people you're talking to are sitting, what they are doing with their hands, their eyes. A guy's got his arms crossed, legs crossed, chin tucked down and frowning. You've got your work cut out for you. This guy's not going to be easy to reach. The lady's standing up from behind her desk. You've got to hurry. She's not going to listen to much more. You've probably got to pick up the pace and get down to it. So the first one is read what you see. Here's the second one. Read what you hear. You've got to be a good listener to be a good communicator. Get some feedback. Listen. To be a good parent, you've got to be a good listener. To talk well, you've got to listen well. That's so valuable. Get the feedback. Now, what you hear may help you change gears. Be a little stronger. Be a little softer. Find a different illustration. This one isn't working. Search for another way to say it. Become sensitive to someone else's words, not just by preparing to talk when the other person's through. Listen. Pick up those signals that the feedback of words gives us. Now, here's the third way to read your audience, and that is to read how you feel. Emotional signals. You've got to learn to pick those up. Pick up those feelings. Women just seem to have this part built in. Men can learn it, but women haven't. Woman says it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. Man says, what does that mean? It doesn't feel right. She says it's something. He says something. What is this something? She says, I'm telling you, something doesn't feel right. Now, men can learn it, but women haven't. Learn to read your emotion. Learn to read what others are feeling so you can adjust your communication, so you can adjust your approach, so you can get your message across, so you can communicate well. Communication, having something to say and saying it well. Communication is one of the key ingredients in being able to work well with others, in being able to build our ambition by working well with others. Now that we've talked about some basic communication skills, you need to understand how best to apply them. What you can do and cannot do in the marketplace. How you talk and act while playing volleyball on a Saturday afternoon probably isn't the same as how you'd talk and act around a group of people who want to invest in your company. How you communicate with your old friends and family members is probably an abbreviated version of how you should communicate in a high-powered business setting. When you meet a new group of people, you must watch and listen and be alert before you decide on the appropriate communication style. You might greet old friends with a slap on the back and a tasteless joke, but you certainly wouldn't greet a multi-million-dollar opportunity that way. You must take a few moments to study the temperament of your audience. Listen to how they communicate with each other. Watch how they react to situations and comments. Study your audience, lest you engage in some behavior that will prove inappropriate and costly. Some people would make about $150,000 a year, but they have to be satisfied with about $50,000 because their behavior is costing them the rest of it. They've got the skills, but their behavior is costing them. Keep setting them aside. So let's talk about some of those things in the marketplace that might cost you more than you want to pay. Here's one: bad language. You've got to be careful with language in the marketplace. You've got to be careful here. Some language is more appropriate for the bar. So what should you do? Leave it in the bar. Or else what? You'll have to pay the consequences. We must all be students of consequences, things that cost us, and language is one of the most important ones to consider. Language in the marketplace. Now, if you cuss and tell dirty jokes in the marketplace, that's acceptable to who? Other people in the marketplace who cuss and tell dirty jokes. You've got no problem with them. Matter of fact, they'll probably enjoy having you around. But if you cuss and tell dirty jokes to those who will be offended, then what? They certainly won't want to have you around. And what happens then? It'll cost you. Next one, being late. In some circles it's acceptable, but I'm telling you, most people view being late as being disrespectful. Disrespectful of their time. And if they feel that you're disrespectful of their time, they'll also feel you're disrespectful of their business. Why? Because everything affects everything. Now, if you have a legitimate excuse and your reputation already says that you're punctual, then you might get away with it a time or two. But be careful about being late. One day you just may be too late to close the deal. Be on time. You've also got to be careful about using inside lingo on the outside world. Your industry's buzzwords are just that. Your industries. Be careful not to use this terminology on the outside. People who speak computer language, they've got to learn to shift gears when they go out into the open marketplace. So watch your lingo. Remember to shift gears from the inside lingo to the outside world. You've got to become a good judge of character. Why? To protect yourself. There are shepherds, and there are sheep, and there are wolves. And we must be wise and understand that some wolves are so clever, they've learned to dress up like sheep. But do not miss the story of the full drama of life called good and evil. Awareness, sensitivity, understanding, knowing the scenario and being on alert for what is called the inevitable. We must learn to be a good judge of character. And here's something else we must learn to do to work well with others. We must learn to deliver criticism and express anger in a safe way. It's inevitable. During the course of working with others, it's inevitable that you'll come across some situation that'll result in anger. Or criticism needs to be handed down. It's just a part of life, that you delegate some responsibility, and through either a lack of good communication or a lack of good listening on the other end, it's inevitable that some situation will get you all hot and bothered. Now what do you do with your anger? You can't lash out. You can't lash out at your children or your friends or your colleagues. But here's what you can do, and here's what you must do. Lash out at the problem or the situation. Honey, you say to your teenager, "You know I love you, but what you did was wrong. I hate it that you took the car without asking first. And I especially hate it that you got a speeding ticket. What were you thinking?" So whatever the punishment might be, make sure you're punishing the bad deed, not the person. Your assistant ends up sending the contract to the seller instead of the buyer. Make sure your assistant knows that you appreciate him, but you don't appreciate the wrongdoing. Whatever criticism you hand down, whatever anger you're processing, make sure that the one to receive it knows full well that you care about the person, but hate what they did. And if you're too steamed up to be this rational about it, make sure to keep your mouth closed until you've cooled off a bit. In Dale Carnegie's book, The Leader in You, he describes the attributes of kind criticism. He quotes Andres Navarro's technique of kind criticism as the 3-for-1 rule. If you don't like something about the way someone works, write down the problem. But before you confront that person with criticism, discover 3 good things about the person. Noticing 3 good things gives you the right to criticize 1 bad thing. Interesting thought. Criticism after appreciation. With well-delivered words, well-chosen words, you can admonish the doing without admonishing the doer. This is important. You love the person. You hate the act. Make sure they know the difference. You don't have to couch the words. You don't have to hide your anger or disappointment. But you do have to make sure that your communication is effective so that the wrongdoing will never be done again. And the more you care, the stronger you can be. This has to do with intensity now. The intensity of your communication to those you work with, those you live with, those you're close to. The more you care, the stronger you can be. If you really care for someone, I'm telling you, they'll give you room to get right on their case. They'll give you room to use some powerful language. They'll give you room to go right after them. If they know that you really care. You can solve some sticky problems. You can attack the dark side and the bad behavior. They'll give you room if they know how much you care. And the more you care, the stronger you can be. Now that we've discussed communication skills, let's move on to see how we can translate these skills into creating more business. Networking. Working within a group of people that we know and/or working within a group of people that we want to know. Let's quickly go through some techniques for effective networking. Number 1, when developing relationships through networking, remember that they must be mutually beneficial. The favor you do for someone else is expected to be returned someday. For each contact you give someone else, you expect one in return. For each tip you give out, you expect one back. Or as the law of sowing and reaping says, it'll come back to you multiplied. That's number one. Make sure your networking relationships are mutually beneficial. Number two, keep the relationship active. Schedule quarterly lunches. Plan to meet at Chamber of Commerce networking events. If you see a story about your contact in the newspaper, clip it out and send it to her with a note of congratulations. Send articles that may be relevant to his or her career. Keep in touch. Don't just call when you need something. Keep in touch. Number three, express your gratitude and appreciation. Make it clear that you're appreciative of the contact or tip that was sent your way. Send a finder's fee if your latest deal was the result of your contact. Send a special gift if a tip panned out. A man I know got a stock tip in passing from an acquaintance of his. Well, the stock made this man thousands of dollars richer. What'd he do? Sent a bottle of Dom Perignon and 2 very expensive gold-rimmed crystal glasses and a thank you note. Now, he didn't have to do that, but I'm telling you, the recipient will never forget this guy. Number three, don't forget to express your gratitude and appreciation. Number four, keep your professional relationships professional. If it looks like jealousy is rearing its ugly head, firmly but politely, cut it off. When the relationship no longer serves you, no longer is mutually beneficial, step away from it. If the relationship you're building through networking appears to be harmful, take a sword to it. The fifth key to networking is to remember the other person's need for achievement. This is an important tip to keep in mind, especially when you're dealing with someone who's not as advanced in their career as you are. By respecting this need, by providing guidance and leadership, by sharing some of your personal experiences with this person, they'll end up bringing opportunities to you. Why? Because they value your insight. They value your experience. And most of all, because they value the time and the knowledge you've shared with them. Acknowledge those who are on their way up. You may just find out one day that it was your extra effort that gave them the boost they needed. So, with your communication skills in place, you'll increase your ability to work well with others. Listen, talk, share, sympathize, empathize, and when you extend your reach to work well with others that you know, you'll be able to extend your reach to work well with those you don't. You'll be able to develop networking skills. And once you do, you'll find that networking is an incredible way to increase your opportunities, tip by tip, contact by contact. And now recall the laws of sowing and reaping, of giving and receiving. The more you give of yourself in an attempt to communicate well with others and work well with others, the more you give, the more you'll receive as you strive to build your ambition. And here's the last but most important key to working well with others. Learn to work with others that deserve it, not those who need it. You must follow the guidelines of life itself. Life responds to what? Deserve. So work with the people who deserve it, not the people who need it. And here's what else you've got to do. Show people how to deserve it. How to deserve your work. How to deserve your time. How to deserve your attention. Show people how to make small steps of progress and reward them along the way. And show them how to deserve it one step at a time. One step at a time, until finally they work themselves out of need and into deserve. Out of the shadows of despair and poverty into the light of ambition. Self-appreciation, the sixth step to building your ambition. Self-appreciation says, acknowledge your accomplishments, Appreciate your potential. Know that your appreciation of yourself and your achievements will continue to fuel the fire of ambition. Self-appreciation is an integral part of success. You must develop a strong appreciation for your own style, your own methods, your own process. There is no stereotype for success. There is no model for success. There is no such thing. So what exactly is success? Success is the steady progress toward your personal goals, your own personal goals, designed by you, not by the latest #1 bestseller on the book list, not by some philosophy that's imposed on you. Success is the steady progress toward your own personal goals. Success is not an amount of money. Success is not a bank account. Success is the steady progress of you toward your goals, the person you want to be, the things you want to have, for yourself and for your family, your business goals, your personal goals, spiritual goals, health goals, the goals that give you satisfaction and joy. To me, that's what success is, and my definition of success could be radically different than yours. So there's no one definition of success. You've got to have this much money in the bank. You've got to look like this. You've got to live in this kind of home. You've got to have this kind of financial security. In my personal opinion, those things have nothing to do with success. Success is your own steady progress toward the goals you set, daily, weekly, monthly, for your life, for your business, for your family, for yourself. If a man tells me, hey, pretty soon I'm cashing it all in, and I'm going to head for the mountains and live in a cabin and feed the squirrels and live off the land, I'm telling you, if I get a report later that said this man did that, cashed it all in, headed for the mountains, bought a cabin, is feeding the squirrels and living off the land, if I were to hear that, I'd say this man was a smashing success. So success is not some stereotype. Resist all stereotypes. There is no one model. There is no one set way. There is only your way. It takes a combination of philosophies and ideologies. It takes a combination of thoughts to mold and to merge with your own. We need the mental food that others provide. We need mental exercise. We need to open up our minds to different alternatives. We need to learn to appreciate the other side of the debate so that we can strengthen our own and defend our own. We need to expose ourselves to a wide range of thoughts and philosophies and ideologies. You've got to listen to a variety of speakers, read a variety of books. No one speaker has all the answers for you. No one book has all the answers. You can't get all the answers from one person. We need a variety of influence to give us input, to give us ideas, to manage our business, to manage our relationships, to manage our finances, to take advantage of our time. We need a variety of influences. We need a variety of books in our library. We need a variety of tapes in our video library, our audio library. We need a variety of voices. And here's what else we need. We need a variety of points of view. Points of view can be so valuable. Somebody says, did you ever see it from over here? And you say no. So you step over there where they are and you take a look back over here from their point of view. And you say, my gosh, I never thought from this perspective. It's so different. No wonder you think the way you do. Here's the clue. Take advantage of all that's available in terms of mental food and mental exercise. Be eager to learn. Always be eager to learn, no matter how far along you are in the journey, no matter where you are in your success. Keep that eagerness to learn. Gather up as much knowledge as you can. And then what? Debate it. Put it all on the table and look at it. Dissect it. Turn it around and stare at it. Ask questions, make statements. Don't take it for granted that one person has all the answers you're looking for. Take their knowledge, but don't take it as the only knowledge. Make sure that what you finally do, the model you develop of strong appreciation for your own style and your own methods and your own process for achievement, make sure that what you finally do is a product of your own conclusion. That's what's valuable. Not to just go do what someone says without debating it. Consider the source and then do it your way. You can take an interest in what someone says, digest it, take notes on it, but then debate it, look at it from all angles. Be a student, not a follower. Building your ambition is a process unique to each and every one of us. Gather all the knowledge that you can. Then develop your approach as a product of your own conclusions. Your own conclusions, not someone else's conclusions. Your own conclusions. You can't fall for other people's philosophies. They may not be right. As you collect knowledge, you must sort through it and find out what's valuable. Then you can develop your own philosophy. And your own philosophy becomes the most important of your guidance systems, one of your guiding lights. So develop your own plan, lest you get into trouble with someone else's. And debate the plans of others, the philosophies of others, the achievement styles of others, the way others appreciate themselves. Debate all this. Why? Because it affects everything. The value you place on your plan, the value you place on yourself, the value you place on life in general affects everything around you. It even affects how you respect time, the 24 hours a day given to each of us to do with as we please. There's a connection between appreciating yourself and appreciating and respecting time. People who appreciate themselves understand and respect the use of time. Here's what I call the best-kept secret of the rich. Interesting discovery that I made one day. I couldn't believe it when I found out that rich people have about 24 hours a day, and poor people have about 24 hours a day. Wouldn't that drive you mad until you found out what the difference was? I'm telling you, the difference is in the management of the time. A few simple disciplines practiced every day, and your whole life can change. Your future can change, your income can change. But the rest of it is getting a handle on the management of time. Now, we invested one whole session in this series to proper self-discipline. And guess what? Discipline shows up again here, as it does everywhere. Discipline is also important in how you manage your time, the 24 hours given to you every day. So I want to give you a few things that might help you to get a handle on the management of time. Here's the first one. Ignore the subject. Ignore the subject. That's not a bad suggestion. Somebody says, well, I've been behind all my life. Doesn't look like that's going to change. Forget it. I like that approach. At least it's honest. Nobody's ideas of success and time management are right for you unless they can be applied by you. We've already said that it's important to resist all stereotypes for success, to resist all models of success. So here's one alternative to time management. Ignore the subject. Don't let somebody pressure you by saying, here's what you've got to do with your time. Resist all that. Take advice, but don't take orders. Let somebody give you their opinions and then accept the ones you want to accept. And the ones you don't want to accept, don't accept. Resist all attempts to pressure you into becoming the model of success. Resist all that. Do it on your own time, the time that's right for you. Now here's another alternative to time management. Step down to an easier task. Step down to something more manageable. Something that doesn't require that much time, that much effort. That's an alternative. Some people in sales are promoted to being manager. They say, oh, now I've got to be a manager. Heck with this, it takes 14 hours a day, worrying about everybody. I'm getting back out in the field. Get my sales job back. And that's a good alternative. Somebody works for a company and says, "Oh, I'd love to own one of these companies." Then they find out what it takes to own one of those companies. What kind of pressure, what kind of hours. Can't play golf 3 days a week. And finally says, "Hey, I've had it up to here with all the headaches and trauma and dealing with all these people's lives and running a company and being responsible for all the stuff. I'm going to step down." And that's a good alternative. It really is. Don't let yourself be pressured when stepping down might give you a better lifestyle. Little girl complained that her father never played with her. She said Daddy comes home, got his briefcase full of papers, says hello to me, pats me on my head, and disappears. She said, "How come my daddy can't play with me when he comes home?" And her mother explained and said, "Look, your daddy works very hard. He loves you very much. But at the office, he's got so much to do that he can't get it all done. So he has to bring the rest of it home. So that's why your daddy can't play with you." And the little girl says, "Why don't they just put him in a slower group?" Not a bad idea. And I offer that here. If you're too busy to play with your kids, you need to join a slower group. You've got to have time for your family. I went for some things that cost me too much in those early days. If I'd known how much it was going to cost, I never would have paid the price. So you've got to weigh the consequences, how to make everything fit. Sometimes that extra money isn't worth it if it pressures you into losing touch with somebody you really care about. So family must be considered here as well. But here's the best alternative to time management, and that's to get more out of you. If we just get more from ourselves, we can make an hour as valuable as 10 hours used to be. We can get as much done now in a day as we used to get done in a week. Efficiency, skills, knowledge, awareness, practice, getting better, all of that value we can bring to the marketplace, bring to the job, and that's where the real time management comes in. I found out that a normal day is enough time. 8 hours, 10 hours, 5 days, 6 days, that's enough time. The rest of it now has got to be the best use of that time. There's a movement going on now in the workplace. The movement is people setting up home offices, telecommuting to work, working at home and communicating with the office through fax machines and computers and modems and delivery services. People are even starting to work in one state and live in another. They don't need to be at the office all the time. For some jobs, they don't need to be at the office at all. And guess what some of these folks find out? The projects that used to take 2 days, they get done in a few hours. Why? Because they have no distractions. No people stopping by their office to chat. No unsolicited phone calls to take. No unexpected visitors to deal with. When they work, they work. When they play, they play. Now, not everybody has the luxury of having a job that can work like this, but maybe some of the same principles can be applied at the office, like do not disturb times, like scheduling your day so that you're totally undisturbed during those hours in which you complete your best work, like setting certain hours each day to take appointments and phone calls. And that's really where the magic of personal development comes in. Knowing who you are, becoming more valuable, being more valuable, knowing the value of your rhythms in getting certain tasks done, getting things done more efficiently in a shorter period of time, working smarter, not harder. Let me give you some more thoughts now on time management, just a list of things you should consider. Number 1, you run the day or it runs you. Part of the key to time management is just staying in charge. But here's what usually happens. We start something and we're in control. But as time starts to unfold, pretty soon we start losing control. You know, you start a business and you're running it, and pretty soon, what? It's running you. You have to stop every once in a while and say, hold it, hold it. Who's in charge here? So here's a good phrase to jot down. Something will master and something will serve. That's the nature of life. That's just how it goes on this spinning planet of ours. Something will master and something will serve. And here's what you have to make sure you become. The master. You run the day. You run the business. You run the enterprise. You run the job. You stay in charge. Now here's how you can stay in charge. Have your written set of goals with you at all times. Then prioritize your goals and decide which is important. Then constantly review your goals. Then have your goals match up to a good written game plan. The game plan that we talked about earlier. The game plan that says, take it out of your head and put it down on paper. Then, with game plan in hand, try to separate the majors from the minors. The really important things from the things you just have to do. And prioritize. Is this a major day or a minor day? And adjust your time accordingly. Is this a major conversation or a minor conversation? A lot of people don't do well, and here's why. They major in minor things. They spend too much time on things that don't count, and too little time on things that should count. So you're about to pick up the phone and make a call, but before you do, decide, is this a major call? Is this a minor call? If it's a major call, it needs a little preparation. If it's a minor call, a few pleasantries will probably do. Hi, how are you? Tell a little joke, exchange some pleasantries. So a little evaluation will save you a lot of time. Major, minor. Next time management essential, don't mistake movement for achievement. You probably know some people around you who are just plain busy being busy. You've got to be busy being productive. It's easy to get faked out by being busy. Guy comes home at night, flops down in the easy chair, says, I've been going. But the real question is, doing what? I mean, it's the doing what. That's the real key, not the going. Some people are going, doing figure eights. They're not making much progress. Don't mistake movement for achievement. Evaluate the hours in your days and see if there's not a lot of wasted time in there that you could manage better. Do more with. The next key to good time management is good concentration. Focus. You've just got to zero in on the job at hand. Concentrate. Don't start your business day until you get to the business. I used to start my business day in the shower. I'm trying to compose a letter in the shower. The cobwebs haven't been cleared out yet. I'm not awake yet, and I'm trying to compose a letter. Found out it doesn't work. Wait till you get to the office to start your work. Wait until you get to work before you get to the work. Don't start your business day at the breakfast table. It's not good for the family. Here's another one. On the way to work, don't think about work. It's dangerous. There's a lot of cars out there on the highway. Can you imagine if everybody was driving to work thinking about work? It'd be a mess. Accidents everywhere. Here's what you've got to do. On the way to work, concentrate on the way. In the shower, concentrate on the shower. At the breakfast table, concentrate on the family. Wherever you are, be there. Don't be somewhere else. Give whatever you're doing the gift of attention. Give people the gift of attention. The gift of attention. Concentration. Next time management essential, learn to say no. Boy, it's easy in a social society to just say yes too much. Over-obligate yourself. Then it takes all those phone calls and all that time to back out of it and redo it. Don't say yes too quickly. Better to say, I don't know if I can make it. but I'll give you a call. Better to say you don't know than to say yes, yes, yes too quickly, trying to be nice and then having to back out. One of my colleagues has a good saying, don't let your mouth overload your back. Committing too soon, too quick. Being too eager to please. Appreciate yourself, your time, appreciate your own limits. Know when your commitment to someone else will end up taking time away from yourself and from your family. Have self-appreciation for your special time alone and with those you love and those who love you. This is especially important for charity work, volunteer work as well. A group of entrepreneurs I know have been very successful in their business, getting a lot of press. Pretty soon they're swamped with requests to do pro bono work, do their stuff for free. They must get a couple of offers a month to sit in on one charity board or another. But here's how they handle it. They take all requests, weigh them for time commitments, evaluate them for opportunities, then they take a collective vote on which two they'll accept during the next 12 months. You can't immediately say yes to offers that sound prestigious. You can't immediately say yes to social functions, things that sound like a lot of fun. You've got to say maybe and take time to evaluate what's an important contribution to society and what'll just take time away from your ambitions and your family. Be eager to please yourself and your family. Don't be so eager to please everybody else. Appreciate your own limits. You don't have to fill up every second of the day. Take time to appreciate what you've accomplished. Take time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Your success should be a pleasure. Appreciating what you've got and what you've done and who you've become is important. It's an important component in fueling your future achievements. Just knowing that you've accomplished in one day what you laid out in your game plan. Just knowing that you finished all you started out to do that day. That's encouraging. And it's these little daily advantages that you're gaining that continue to fuel your achievement. Let's say you're figuring out tomorrow's game plan tonight, and tomorrow looks pretty light. So all you write down for tomorrow is cleanup day. You know, clean up all the little notes on your desk. Write all the thank you notes you haven't gotten around to writing all week. Take care of a few phone calls that keep getting shuffled from one day to the next. Nothing major, just minor stuff. But nonetheless, little stuff that keeps nagging on you until you get it done. So you spend your day in a cleanup mode. You file the notes, write the thank you cards, make the phone calls. Not a major day, but at the end of the day, you feel you've accomplished so much. Why? Because you've taken care of so many little details. The little details that can make a major difference. You feel like you've really achieved something during this day that started out to be so minor. Little achievements are just as important as big achievements. Why? Because you can't appreciate the big achievements without first appreciating the little ones. Success is the constant process of working toward your goals, little achievement by little achievement. Little achievements produce big results. George Leonard, in his book Mastery, talks about enjoying the plateau. Enjoying the plateau. Now, this is an important point because so often we find ourselves racing to get ahead, thinking about our next achievement so much that we can't appreciate the time in between. Happiness is not in the getting. Happiness is in the becoming. Happiness is a universal quest. Happiness is a joy that most comes as a result of positive activity. It has a wide variety of meanings, a wide variety of interpretations. Happiness is both the joy of discovery and the joy of knowing. It's the result of an awareness of the full range of life. experiences, sounds, harmonies, dreams, goals. And it's the joy that comes from designing a life that practices the fine art of living well. Happiness is being able to explore all that life offers. Happiness is quite often found in having options. Options of doing what you want to instead of doing what you have to. The option of living where you want to instead of living where you have to. The option of looking like you want to instead of settling for what you have to. Happiness is receiving and sharing, reaping and bestowing. Happiness is found in taking time to enjoy what you've accomplished, in enjoying the plateau, in giving yourself credit when credit is due, in patting yourself on the back for a job well done. Happiness is here and now. Happiness isn't the end result. Happiness is part of the journey. There's an old saying that goes like this: the road to heaven is heaven. The happiness that you're searching for in the future must be found today. The success you're after in the future will only be found by working on it today. Success is the balance between the need for active achievement and the satisfaction in taking the time to acknowledge what you've already achieved. Take time to reflect while you're enjoying the plateau. And while you're reflecting back on your past accomplishments, think about something else. Think about the potential within you that's still untapped. Consider these two questions during your time of reflection. Number one, what could I have achieved in the past had I been more diligent? Could I have been more disciplined, worked smarter instead of harder, said no more often to social functions, to community commitments? What could I have achieved in the past had I tried a little differently? Only you can answer this question. It's very personal. While you're reflecting and enjoying your plateau, all I'm asking is that you dig a little deeper and see if you can't be a bit more effective next time. Work a little smarter instead of a little harder. So that's question number one. What could I have achieved in the past if I tried a little more diligently? Now here's number two. How can I achieve more in the future? Well, if you take some quality time to thoughtfully answer question number one, you'll probably have a clue as to what's needed in the future. Do you need to work more diligently? Do you need to be more disciplined? Do you need to work smarter instead of harder? Do you need to say no more often? Do you need to manage your time better? That's one of the keys to reflection. You can put down on paper what worked for you in the past and figure out ways to translate this information into the future. You can design your better future if you can learn from your past. You can face your future with more excitement, more anticipation, when you design a future worth getting excited about. You can see your future and have it pull you, but don't forget to appreciate yourself for what you have done so far, for what you have done today. Take a self-appreciation inventory. Ask yourself a few questions. Start with number one. What have I achieved in the last 4 days, the last 2 weeks, the last 6 months, the last year, the last 10 years? What have I achieved during these time periods? Write it down. Take a self-appreciation inventory of all you've done and all you've accomplished and all you've become. Take inventory of yourself. Now compare this list to your goals. Have you accomplished all you set out to do in the last 4 days, 2 weeks, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years? Compare your list. Maybe you've been so busy trying to reach your goals that you haven't taken the time to sit back and reflect on where you've really been. Look back at your list and say, wow, I really have been through a lot. I really have learned a lot. Look what I've done. Look what I've become. I wasn't like this 10 years ago or even 1 year ago. Look at me. I'm doing okay. Building your ambition takes little steps. one step at a time, one day at a time, 1 week at a time. And it's like taking your family to a reunion where people haven't seen your kids for 6 months or even a year. They say, "My, look how you've grown." Well, you know your kids have grown, but when you see them every day, it's hard to notice. So write down all your accomplishments and see where you've been and what you've done and who you've become. You'll say, "Oh, look how I've grown." And that's step one in taking a self-appreciation inventory. Now here's step two. What could I have achieved that I didn't? Be honest now, this is your inventory. Nobody else has to see it. What could you have achieved over the last week, the last month, the last quarter, the last year? What could you have achieved that you didn't? Would a game plan have made a difference? Would your direction have made a difference? Would greater preparation have made a difference? Would more discipline have made a difference? In how you changed your habits, changed your life? Would time management have made a difference? Major time over minor time? Ask yourself, what could I have achieved that I didn't? Now, take this one step further with number 3. What do I want to achieve in the next 4 days, the next 2 weeks, the next 6 months, over the next year, over the next 10 years? What do I want to achieve? Well, all this falls in line with your goals. What you could achieve has to fall in line with what you want to achieve. What you could do has to line up with what you want to do. And what you could become has to meet what do I want to become. Everything affects everything. And through the proper disciplines practiced every day, through the proper disciplines, the what could I do has to match up with what do I want to do. And here's number 4. What can I do to achieve this that I'm not doing now? What could I do to achieve my goals that I'm not doing now? What things do I need to work on that I'm not working on now? Remember, it's easy to do the disciplines, the little things every day, and it's easy not to. It's easy not to. Look back at the self-knowledge inventory that you took on side 3 of this program, the session on positive self-direction. Look back at the list you made of your 3 most important work-related goals. Look back at your list of the 3 most important personal and spiritual goals. How are you doing with these? Are you making progress a little each day, Are you appreciative of the progress you've made so far? It's important that you take time out to acknowledge yourself, your achievements, what you've done so far, where you've come, who you've become. Self-appreciation is a stage in building ambition that takes a little more maturity, a greater resolve, knowing that you'll do it until you get it done, and taking the time out to acknowledge yourself for doing it. Self-appreciation comes from already being firmly set on the course of positive self-direction, being on the right track, having that wonderful blend of humility and self-esteem, knowing within yourself that you're accomplishing your goals, and knowing yourself enough and being confident in yourself enough to avoid needless bragging. Self-appreciation says that you admit there's room for improvement, knowing that you're on the right track, but admitting the need for continued growth, more books, more seminars, more skills, more disciplines, greater awareness, bigger vision. There's always more room to grow. There's always more knowledge to gain, always more skills to perfect. We're never done with the education process, because education is part of the path to wealth. Education and learning is part of the path to health. Continued education can turn you around if you're headed in the wrong direction. We must never stop learning, growing, expanding. And we must never forget to take time to appreciate ourselves for what we've done in pursuit of what we want to become.